Coming up to the holidays after the loss of my parents, was hoping to make it through just by hanging on for dear life. So, just trying to remind myself to remain in the present instead of being wrapped up in all the hurt and the heartbroken state that you're in. So I did that by like focusing on like just on my kids, on being with my family, and kind of just like soaking in all of that.
Approaching the holiday season after a loss is difficult, and I was hoping to make it through by just leaning on my family and depending on them to depending on them to help me through it and be each other's supports.
The biggest emotional challenge while trying to reach the goal of making it through, um, it's really a couple of things. Like, one of them was jealousy, just being jealous of um, my kids, even like anybody who had still their parents with them and was there. So like my husband, and so the jealousy was there. um just they get to hug their mom, they get to hug their dad, they get to say I love you, they get to be with them in their presence, and I don't. So I think that was probably the biggest emotional hurdle to go through, and it still kind of is, even like the longer time goes by.
The biggest emotional challenge I faced trying to reach that goal was that I don't open up very easily. So trying to force myself to open up to be able to lean on my family was incredibly difficult.
Looking back on the first holidays after losing my parents, I do think I was successful. I think I was more successful than not, I guess, would be the non-answer to the question. But like, more more of, there were moments when I felt like I wanted to just lose it. Cry, be upset, heartbroken like you are. And I would have to like really, really, really remind myself to no, no, you can make it through this, and then later when you're alone, we can do what we need to as far as breaking down and all of that. So I do feel like I was pretty successful.
Do I think I accomplished that goal? That's tricky. I think I did better this past holiday season than I have the ones prior. I've actually was able to open up and talk about it a little bit more rather than just sit quietly in the corner like I would much rather do.
If I had to give advice to somebody navigating holidays while they're grieving, it would be to really, really try and be present. Try to step outside of the grief for just those moments in time, so you can have those moments in time with the important people, because that too is important. I mean, we grieve because we loved, so, and we love still with the family members that are still here. So it's really important to like try and just step outside of that grief for just those moments in time, even if it's just 30 seconds at a time, so that you can really enjoy it and be present and make those memories, which are very, very important.
My advice to someone who is trying to navigate the holidays while grieving is you just have to find your support system, whether it's your family or a friend, um, somebody to open up to and talk to about it, who cares and can help you find your way through it.
Andy and Bonnie were my mom and my dad. And to me, they were role models in what I wanted to be like and what I didn't want to be like. One of the special things that you have as a child is to be able to kind of pick and choose, if you're aware enough, the things that you want to take with you when you get older and the things that you maybe would like to change as you get older. So my mom and dad were my confidants, they were my cheerleaders, they were my role models. My dad was a real big role model in what love between spouses should look like how, you know, a husband should treat his wife and you know, things like that. And my mom, she was really good with advice about things. And so our relationship was very open. There wasn't really anything that we couldn't talk about, even when I was, you know, 10, 11, 12, 16, 17, 22, 25, you know, growing up. It was always known and proven time and time and time again that they were there and it was okay to come and talk to them about really anything. So, you know, they were really good parents who cared and showed up every time.
Andy and Bonnie were my mom's parents, so my grandparents. I called them Nanny and Papa. And I grew up the first 8-ish years of my life living with them. So Papa was always like my biggest idol, the man of the house, and I turned into his little copycat.
A favorite memory I have with my dad is when he came home from the hospital. It was after Christmas on my birthday, but we were celebrating Christmas on my birthday because he was in the hospital on Christmas. And my mom was determined we are going to celebrate Christmas. And I say it was with my dad because he was very much take it or leave it as far as Christmas goes, any of really the holidays. Unless there's football on, then he's fine with it. But so when he came home, he was changed. He was in the hospital. It was life-threatening. He survived. He was changed. And so it mattered to him that we were celebrating Christmas still, even in April. And he actually let me take a selfie picture with him. And he was not one for pictures. It was, you get one picture, it's the family picture every year, that's it. No more, no less. That's it. And but he actually let me like get snuggled up close to him, and I took a selfie with him, and to this day it's probably like the best memory I have.
One of my favorite memories with them around the holidays was Nanny would go all out for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and she would get these like bottles of sparkling grape juice that tasted so bad. But as a kid, like seeing the adults drink their wine out of their wine bottles, like it felt, the same. So you would suffer through it and drink it anyways, even though it was so bad.
The day I lost my mom was incredibly traumatic and scary. It was heartbreaking and out of the blue and unexpected. And so I had gotten a call in the middle of the night from my sister that the home that my mom was in had called my dad and said that they had found my mom unresponsive. So he left to go find out what was going on, be there with her, and my sisters and I were going to be there after. And so I told my sister I'm on my way. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Probably got there in 10 minutes. And her husband were out in the driveway waiting for me. And her husband got in the car and he said, "I have to tell you something." And my stomach dropped and I said, "What?" And he said, "Your mom has passed away." And I lost it. I was crying, didn't believe him, sitting there in disbelief. And I pulled myself together because I knew my dad was there and he with her and he was alone and we needed to get to him. So I had to drive us. Bethany was in an absolute mess. And so he, her husband, said, "I love you guys. You need to be careful, get there safely, that kind of stuff." And so when we got there, it was pretty solemn and heavy, and it was really hard to see my dad going through that on top of like going through it myself too. So yeah, that was the day we lost my mom.
The day we lost Bonnie hit me a lot harder than I expected. We had a long battle of dementia, and the nanny we knew, that I knew growing up, wasn't really there. But so like I had grieved her death before her actual death, if that makes sense. So I didn't think when I got the phone call that she had passed that it would hit as hard as it did, but it did, and it was difficult knowing that somebody I grew up with and who I was able to talk to about everything wasn't going to be able to answer the phone anymore.
The day we lost my dad was really several days. He had fallen and broken his hip. And so he was in the hospital. And the week prior to that, he'd had a stent put in his heart, in one of the valves. And so when he broke his hip, there were two choices we had. He could go to a short-term or long-term nursing home and be in a bed laying flat for up to 3 months, depending on how long it took for the bones to heal themselves. Or they could go in and do a hip replacement. And because he'd recently had the stent put in, he was on quite heavy duty blood thinners, things like that that come with that territory. And so they were very concerned about blood loss, things like that, whether his heart would be strong enough to handle it or not. And so he had a crappy choice and he had a really crappy choice to make. And so he decided to do the surgery. He decided to go ahead with the surgery because he's not the one to lay around and do nothing. Like, that's not him. It would have driven him absolutely insane to do so. So we went in for surgery, and the surgery had taken a little bit longer than necessary, or than they thought that it was going to. And he came out, and the surgeon came out and he said that Dad had flatlined on the table, that he had bled out a lot. He was, not to get gruesome, but he was going to move a vein out of the way to do the replacement and punctured the vein and it bled out. And so he said he had lost quite a lot of blood and he wasn't sure how it was going to go as far as him recovering. So when he came out, he was on life support, which my dad did not want to ever have to do. So we had to deliberate, and there was a lot of thought and prayer and emotion flying around about what my dad's wishes were and is it the right decision. And ultimately we ended up deciding to pull the life support because he wouldn't have wanted to be that way. So that was how we lost my dad.
The day we lost Andy was a lot harder because, like I mentioned, he was my idol growing up. When I got that phone call, I had just gotten to work, and I had to text my boss that I was leaving. And I remember I cried the entire drive home and then woke my wife up so that I could cry some more and not be by myself.
If I could talk to my mom and dad one more time, I would probably say thank you. I would say thank you for being there. Thank you for teaching me how to be a human being, how to love and how to cherish the things that really matter, how to look past all the noise. Thank you for teaching me how to be the best mom for my kids and how to love my kids. Just thank you for loving me.
If I could talk to either one of them again, I would tell them that I miss them and that I hope I make them proud every day, because that's how I try to live my life.